The wind carried dust across the plains of Arizona, whispering through the dry grass and creaking fences. Daniel Holt, a rancher with nothing but his name and a piece of land too stubborn to die, stood outside his crooked little shack. The roof leaked when it rained, the walls groaned in the wind, and the floorboards sang like ghosts when he walked. But it was home. His father built it, and Daniel had never known any other place to call his own. The town folks called him the man who dreamed too big for his boots. Every spring, when the wildflowers came and the valley turned gold, he would ride into town to find a wife. He wasn't looking for beauty or riches, just someone who'd share a meal, a laugh, maybe a prayer before bed. But year after year, the same story played out. He'd meet a girl, kind at first, curious about the quiet cowboy who lived alone by the ridge. They'd smile, talk by the well, and listen when he spoke of his ranch. But the moment they saw his house, their smiles vanished. The crooked porch, the cracked window, the field of weeds where a garden should be, all of it made them turn cold. "You live here?" they'd ask, as if the word itself hurt. He'd nod, his hat low, ashamed but too proud to lie. And one by one they'd leave, each one riding away faster than the last, their laughter fading into the desert wind. The neighbors whispered, "He'll die alone up there." The saloon men laughed, "Ain't no woman dumb enough to marry a man with a shack." Daniel stopped answering after a while. He just kept fixing fences, tending what little crop grew, and praying that the Lord still saw him out there. But that spring, the 6th since he'd started asking, something changed. He was walking back from town, rejected again, when he saw a rider stopped near his fence. A young woman, her face half hidden under a worn hat, was staring at his house. "Can I help you, miss?" he asked. She turned, eyes sharp but kind. "You Daniel Holt?" He nodded. "Heard you're looking for a wife," she said. He hesitated, embarrassed. "I was," he muttered, "but I reckon that news travels faster than it should." She smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "Well, I ain't afraid of hard work or a leaky roof." Daniel blinked, not sure if she was mocking him or serious. "You seen the place?" he asked. "I seen it," she said, looking at the shack like it was a challenge. "Ain't pretty, but neither's life out here. What matters is who you're sharing it with." For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. The wind blew between them, carrying the smell of dust and old hope. Then, for the first time in years, the lonely cowboy smiled. The next morning, the sun rose over the Holt ranch, spilling gold over the crooked shack and the dry earth around it. Daniel woke early like always, but today something felt different. The woman from yesterday, her name was Elena Price, was already outside, sleeves rolled up, hauling a bucket of water from the well. Her hair caught the sunlight like copper, and her eyes held the kind of quiet determination you only saw in folks who'd been through storms and still stood tall. "You don't have to do that," Daniel said, stepping onto the porch. "I told you, I ain't afraid of work," she replied, without looking up. "This house ain't gonna fix itself." He smiled a little, scratching the back of his neck. "Most folks run when they see this place." She looked at him then, her expression steady. "Then I ain't like most folks." And she wasn't. Within a day, the place began to change. She cleaned the windows until the sunlight poured in again. She patched the roof with tar and old planks, humming a tune as she worked. Daniel helped her where he could, lifting, sawing, holding tools, but mostly he just watched in quiet awe. The way she moved, steady and sure, made him believe for the first time that maybe his father's old house still had life in it. By noon the neighbors had noticed. A pair of men on horseback stopped near the fence, whispering and laughing. "He's found another one said. "Bet she won't last a week," the other chuckled. "Can't blame her for trying, but she'll leave soon as the rain comes through that roof." Elena heard them. She didn't look up, didn't speak, but Daniel saw her shoulders stiffen. Later, when the riders left, he said quietly, "You don't gotta prove nothing to them." She turned to him, eyes fierce but calm. "I ain't proving anything, Daniel. I'm just building something worth staying for." Her words sank deep into him, deeper than she could have known. That night, they sat outside the house as the sky burned orange and purple. He poured her coffee in a chipped mug, and for the first time, laughter filled the space between those broken walls. The coyotes howled in the distance, but the land around them felt softer somehow, like it was beginning to heal. Daniel looked at her hands, blistered from work, and said, "You could have gone anywhere. Why here?" She looked toward the setting sun and said simply, "Because every woman wants a place to belong. This place looks like it's been waiting for someone to love it." His throat tightened. He didn't have fancy words, so he just nodded. "Reckon it has," he said softly. The night came gentle, the air still warm, and as they sat together under the endless stars, the old shack didn't look so broken anymore. It looked like the start of something new. By the end of the week, word had spread all across Dry Creek. Daniel Holt, the poor cowboy with the broken shack, had a woman living with him. Folks in town didn't take long to turn whispers into gossip. The saloon filled with laughter whenever his name came up. "He finally found one blind enough to stay," the bartender joked, slamming down a glass. Others chuckled, shaking their heads. "Give her 2 weeks. Once the rain starts, she'll be gone like the rest." But Eleanor didn't hear laughter. She heard purpose. Each morning, she rose before the sun, cleaned the yard, mended clothes, and planted flowers by the porch. Daniel tried to tell her it was useless. The ground was too dry, the season too late, but she just smiled. "Some things bloom when folks say they can't," she said. The flowers didn't bloom yet, but her words did. One Saturday, Daniel had to ride into town for supplies. Elena went with him, walking beside the wagon as he traded grain and nails. The stares started the moment they arrived. Women whispered behind their parasols. Men nudged one another and grinned. Old Martha, the storekeeper's wife, looked Elena up and down and said loud enough for all to hear, "You poor thing. You don't know what you've gotten yourself into, do you?" "That shack's a curse." Elena froze for a moment, then smiled softly. "Maybe it was," she said, "but now it's a home." The crowd went quiet. Daniel turned, startled by her calm. Martha scoffed, but before she could speak again, Elena added, "You all laugh at him, but I've seen more kindness in that broken house than I've seen in this whole town." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried like thunder in that dry air. "He's a man who works hard, gives thanks for little, and never complains." "You think a house makes a man worth marrying? Then maybe you all built the wrong kind of homes." No one answered. Even the storekeeper looked down. Daniel stood there, hat in hand, eyes shining with pride he didn't know he still had. When they left town, the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was sacred. On the way back, he glanced at her, trying to find the words. "You didn't have to say all that," he murmured. She smiled faintly. "I didn't say it for you, Daniel. I said it 'cause it was true." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. The land around them glowed gold under the late sun, and as thunder rolled across the ridge, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not just hope, but peace. That night, when the rain finally came, it didn't leak through the roof the way it used to. Somehow, the sound of it felt like a hymn, and the little shack on the edge of nowhere finally felt like home. The storm rolled in before dawn, black clouds swallowing the stars. The wind howled through the valley like a wounded beast, rattling the windows and shaking the little house to its bones. Daniel woke to the sound of wood cracking and the smell of rain pouring through the roof. He jumped up, pulling on his coat, shouting, "Elena!" The barn. She was already at the door, her hair unbound, lantern in hand, eyes fierce and steady. "I'm coming," she said simply, and together they plunged into the storm. The rain came sideways, cold and hard, drenching them instantly. Lightning lit the sky, showing the barn door swinging wide, the horses panicking inside. Daniel ran for the ropes, his boots sinking in mud, shouting over the wind, "Get back inside!" But she didn't listen. Elena grabbed a broken board, using it to block the entrance. Her dress plastered to her legs, her hands bleeding from splinters. A beam cracked overhead, falling near her, but she didn't move. She was too busy tying the gate shut before it could blow open again. Daniel rushed to her side, dragging her out of harm's way, shouting, "You'll get yourself killed." She turned to him, face wet, eyes burning with fire. "Then we'll die fixing what's ours." The words hit him harder than the wind. Together, they worked through the chaos, hammering, pushing, tying, until the barn finally held. When they stumbled back to the house, soaked and exhausted, the fire had nearly gone out. Daniel dropped to his knees beside it, shaking, while Elena threw on more wood, coaxing the flame back to life. The tiny room glowed again, the warmth creeping back slowly. He looked at her, speechless, rain dripping from his hat. She sat down across from him, shivering but calm, her hands red from work. "Why'd you do that?" he whispered. "Because it's my home too," she said softly. "You think I came here for comfort? I came here for you, Daniel, for this place, for something that still means something." He stared at her, heart pounding. "You could have left. You could have found better." She smiled faintly. "Maybe, but better don't always mean right." For a long time neither spoke. The fire cracked, the storm raged outside, and their silence felt like a vow. When the thunder finally moved on, and the first pale light crept across the hills, Daniel reached out and took her hand. "You saved my life tonight," he said. She shook her head. "No, I just reminded you it's worth living." The wind softened, the rain faded, and through the broken window dawn painted their faces gold. The house still leaked, the barn still stood crooked, but in that fragile morning everything broken suddenly felt holy.